Ab world with my feskadus adawamla amen besama ab world with my feskadus adawamla amen besama ab world with my feskadus adawamla amen. Good morning. I think it's still morning. Had to get straight into work today, so squashing this reading in, and it's days like today where this definitely works, doing these readings in public, because this would have been one of those days where it's like, oh, I can't do the reading, I'm too busy, I'll read the Bible tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. So yeah, I will get straight into it, because it is a long reading today in Leviticus 13. Give thanks, blessed love. Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, when a man shall have a swelling in his body skin, or a scab, or a bright spot, and it becomes in the skin of his body a plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests. The priest shall examine the plague in the skin of the body. If the hair in the plague has turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the body's skin, it is a plague of leprosy. So the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his body, and its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, and its hair hasn't turned white, then the priest shall isolate the infected person for 7 days. The priest shall examine him on the 7th day. Behold, if in his eyes the plague is arrested, and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. Behold, if the plague has faded, and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads on the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for the cleansing, he shall show himself to the priest again. The priest shall examine him, and behold, if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the plague of the leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the plague priest, and the priest shall examine him. Behold, if there is a white swelling in the skin, and it's turned the hair white, and there is a raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprosy in the skin of the body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not isolate him, for he is already unclean. If the leprosy breaks out all over his skin, and the leprosy covers all of the skin of the infected person from his head even to his feet, as far as it appears to the priest, then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the leprosy has covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean of the plague. It has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever a raw flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean. The priest shall examine the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turns again and is changed to white, he shall come to the priest. The priest shall examine him. Behold, if the plague is turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean of the plague. He is clean. When the body has a boil on its skin, and it is healed, and it is in the place of the boil where there is white swelling and the bright spot, the reddish white, then it shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine it. Behold, if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the boil. But if the priest examines it, and behold, there is no white hairs in it, and it isn't deeper than the skin, but is dim, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. If it spreads to the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stays in its place and hasn't spread, it is the scar from the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the body has a burn from fire on its skin, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the priest shall examine it, and behold, if the hair has on the bright spot has turned white, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. And if the priest examines it, and behold, there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it isn't deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. The priest shall examine him on the 7th day. If it has spread in the skin, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is the plague of leprosy. If the bright spot stays in the place, and hasn't spread to the skin, but is faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is the scar from the burn. When a man or woman has a plague on the head or in the beard, then the priest shall examine the plague. And behold, if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and the hair in it is yellow and thin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an itch. It is leprosy from the head of the beard. If the priest examines the plague of itching, and behold, it appears it isn't deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate that person infected with itching 7 days. On the 7th day the priest shall examine the plague. And behold, if the itch hasn't spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the appearance of the itch isn't deeper than the skin, then he shall be shaved, and he shall not shave the itch. And then the priest shall isolate the one who has the itch 7 more days. On the 7th day the priest shall examine the itch, and behold, if the itch hasn't spread in the skin, and its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the itch spreads in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and behold, if the itch has spread in the skin, the priest shall not look for the yellow hair, he is unclean. But if in his eyes the itch is arrested, and black hair has grown from it, then the itch is healed, he is clean. Then the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or woman has bright spots in the skin of the body, even white bright spots, then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a harmless rash, and it is broken out on the skin, he is clean. If a man's hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, he is clean. If his hair has fallen out from the front part of his head, he is forehead bald, he is clean. But if it is a reddish-white plague is in the bald head or the bald forehead, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead, then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the swelling of the plague of reddish-white is in the bald head or in his bald forehead, then the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the body, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. His plague is on his head. The leper in whom the plague is shall wear torn clothes, and the hair on his head shall hang loose. He shall cover his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. All the days in which the plague is in him he shall be unclean. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it is a wrap or a woof or linen or wool, whether in leather or in anything made of leather. If the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the leather, or in the wrap, or in the wool, or if anything made of leather, it is a plague of leprosy, and shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine the plague, and isolate the plague 7 days. He shall examine the plague on the 7th day. If the plague has spread in the garment, either in the wrap, or in the woof, or in the skin, Whatever use the skin is used for, the plague is a destructive mildew. It is unclean. He shall burn the garment, whether the wrap or the woof. It says woof, but I'm thinking it must be wool, so I'm going to say wool. Whether the wrap or the wool in the wool or in the linen or anything in the leather in which the plague is, for it is a destructive mildew. It shall be burned in the fire. If the priest examines it, and behold, the plague hasn't spread in the garment, either in the wrap or in the wool or anything of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing that is in the plague is in, and he shall isolate it for 7 more days. Then the priest shall examine it. After the plague is washed, and behold, if the plague hasn't changed its colour, and the plague hasn't spread, and it is unclean, you shall burn it in the fire. It is a mildew spot, whether the bareness is inside or outside. If the priest looks, and behold, the plague has faded after it is washed, then he shall tear it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the wrap, or out of the wool. And it appears again in the garment, either in the wrap or in the wool or in anything of the skin it is spreading. You shall burn what the plague is in with fire. The garment, either the wrap or the wool or whatever the thing of skin is, which you shall wash. If the plague has departed from them, then it shall be washed a second time, and it will be clean. This is the law of the plague of mildew in a garment of wool or linen, either in the wrap or it says woof, or in anything of skin, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. For these few words I give thanks. So yeah, in some of the lines it says woof, literally W-O-O-F, and then in the same sentence it would say wool. So I will look that up to see whether it's a mistranslation or if woof means something that I don't know. So yeah, a very detailed chapter about what they're calling leprosy, and how the priest is the one analysing the skin, and the priest is the one determining whether it's clean or unclean, essentially whether it's infectious or non-infectious. And I think this is definitely, well, it feels like a very definite sign of the times where you wouldn't have a priest. Well, maybe in certain cultures, but predominantly you wouldn't have priests today determine, the medical conditions of someone. That's going to be left to the doctors and the nurses and the medical profession. Whereas in this time we're seeing the priest as being the judge, they're being the spiritual arbiters, and now they're also being the medical advisors. And if someone's determined unclean, but they are separated from the people so that other people don't get infected. But yeah, what we don't have here, and I think there is a stigma with leprosy that they are ungodly, etc. But actually this chapter doesn't say that. I don't think there's anywhere in this chapter that says that these people that have got leprosy should be treated in a bad way, seem to be ungodly or anything like that. I think that's often the connotation, but reading that chapter, that's not what we heard. We just heard quite a medical examination to say if they are deemed to be infectious, then they must separate themselves from the rest of the people, because leprosy was obviously a highly contagious disease. But nothing in here says that they are ungodly people, and I think that's interesting. Because I think for me, the connotation of the lepers and leper colonies and things like that a stigma went along with it. That they were also treated badly by the rest of the people. But yeah, there's no judgment here from God to say that these people have got leprosy because they are ungodly. I think also what we see here again is how these areas are dealt with within the clergy, if you like, the priests. But actually today we have science, we have medical advancements, and it's to trust in those medical advancements for people that have those expertise. So I'll end here because it's been a long reading. Blessings, love, have a blessed day, and God willing, more tomorrow. Give thanks.